Okay, it is 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, and welcome to week 4 of Introduction to Corrections. And I am going to spend this lecture going over the assignments, also giving you some pointers for some of the things that during the first 3 weeks in terms of assignments that some of you have continued to present as errors that has caused you to lose points. So I'm again going to discuss the project because the second assignment for the project is due this Sunday. So you want to make sure that you're up to speed on that. So I'm just going to go right into sharing my screen, and my instructor information you see is there. And then again, one of the issues that many of you lose points on is not the research, but the APA. All written assignments should be in APA format. That means citations in the body of the paper and references at the end. And citations should be throughout the body of the paper. So if it's a 2-page paper and you throw in one citation, you're going to lose points for that. The purpose for citations is to provide support for the statements that are provided in your written assignments. So it is very, very, very important that you demonstrate that you provide the information of where you got the sources from. So the proper citations, according to APA, are given, and we have in here an APA assistance. On the other page, on the left side of the page, you'll see APA assistance. And if you open up that, it gives you guides to APA. It actually gives you videos and things like that. But that's where many of you are losing your points. And then reference must be a separate page. So what you need to do to satisfy APA is have a cover sheet. You should have a paper that provides citations in the body throughout the paper and references at the end. 12-point Roman is the type that you should be using, 12-point Roman. And it's very, very, very important that you do that. The other thing that has caused you to lose points is no cover sheet. You made sure you have that as well. So going down, I provide resources to help you with that. If it gets to the point that I keep continuously seeing, I'm going to refer you out to a tutor to help you. It's important that you get that corrected because you're going to keep losing points. When you don't have citations in the body or you have references at the end only, you will lose 5 points, and that drops your grade. Some of you still have issues with Grammarly. Not a lot of you, just a few. Make sure that you run your papers through Grammarly and check the box for plagiarism. You have a Grammarly account that's given to you under the Resources tab. Do not try to go out and get your own outside of that because you're going to end up paying for plagiarism. But you don't want to do that. Okay? Then our rubrics. Very careful. You should follow them. Each weekly assignment. Check it off. Because when I do the grading, I put in comments at the end of the sections of the rubric where you had problems, and you need to read those and correct those. When you go in your grade book, you can check and you can see there's a little section box for rubric. Click it, and you'll be able to view not only the grade, but then you'll also understand under my comments what you did wrong, and you need to correct those. Okay? Our next lecture will be today. Today is week 4. Will be in week 6. There will not be one next week. In week 6, I will discuss the third part of the project, which will be due during week 7, in which there is no lecture. But in the meantime, once again, I'm going to talk about the project. Okay, so let's go over to our week 4 announcement. Jails and prison. Recollecting your recollection, jails and prison. And there's a difference between the two, which we're going to talk about. And remember, that's 2 of the 4 areas that are acceptable for your assignment: jails and prison, probation and parole. Not law enforcement, not a police agency, not a sheriff's office, but if there is a sheriff's office involved, the jail portion of it. And it must involve the correction people that work in the jail, not the sheriff's police. And probation and parole are the other 2. Don't do both, just do one or the other. So prepare for this assignment. You have to read sections 3 and 6 of the text. I also provided you with your PowerPoints that will provide you an outline and further information that can help you in your assignments in this module. And then prison versus jail, we're going to talk about that. And an interview regarding jail issues today. And then we sometimes try to take a look inside a maximum security prison, but it doesn't work. You could do that on your own. Take a look at that. So your post, which is due yesterday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, issues facing jails. Many of you have done pretty well with that. And then your reply post is due Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Again, I do appreciate when you reply to more than one post, and it makes the discussion forum more interesting. Plus, it gives you a chance to connect with your classmates. Finally, your written assignment is your state prison classification and your state prison classification. So you're going to write that, and I will tell you how many pages or what the requirements are. Of course, you'll find that in the rubric also. And then we're going to discuss your course project, agency overview and background. This is the second section of the project. And then if you could take the time to complete the mid-quarter survey, I'd appreciate that. So let's take a look at the course calendar. Course calendar tells you what due dates are, when assignments are due, even though you already would know that from the announcement. Okay, so here we are in this week, and it tells you again your reading assignment. You click on that, and then so you save that, and then your initial post, your reply post, and then the 29th, your written assignment, and your course project are the 2 assignments that you do. Okay? Very, 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 very important. And then we have coming up the following week, no lecture. So you'll follow the assignment that you have for the following week as well. All right. So now let's go right into the module itself. Let's look at the assignments once again. Using, first, I'm going to come to the course project later. Let's do the written assignment first. So your written assignment, research Department of Corrections in your state. What types of prisons do you have? Provide a brief overview of how each of these are done. Now, in the rubric, I specify what that means in terms of length of assignment. So let's click on the rubric. You see it's due Sunday the 29th. And there it is. A minimum of 1 page. A minimum of 1 page. It is so important. You could go 2 pages, but you want to make sure that you provide the information that is necessary to complete the assignment. You also want to make sure you run your paper through Grammarly, because you can take so much information that you have no analysis or critical thinking involved. So you're going to research the Department of Corrections in your state and identify the types and number of prisons utilized in your state. If you have you don't have to name all sections of it, but the types of prisons is what I'm concentrating on. Usually we're talking about minimum, maximum. We're talking about maybe juvenile, maybe female facilities and things of that nature. Provide a brief overview and how the inmates are assigned. A minimum of 1 page. Remember, it must be your cover sheet, and it's written in grammatical form. It's not written in outline form. Make sure you have citations in the body and references in the end. It says all sources are properly cited in the body of the paper, and that the paper has a reference page. This is in every one of your rubrics. It says you will lose 5 points. I'm telling you, if you don't do that. Okay, and then use credible resources. So that's what you need to do for that assignment. Very, 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 very on point there. Okay. All right. Let's get out of this. Let's move this down. Okay. So we exit that. So now let's go back to the assignment itself for your next one, which is your project. Now, as I've said before, you have selected the agency, and the agency is one of 4: jails, prison, probation, or parole. In this paper, and it's not going to be in bullet point that you write your paper, it's going to be an essay form. And make sure it says you're going to, if you do jail, you're going to provide the information that's asked for in jail. Specify the jail, and so forth and so on. The prison, probation, or parole, you're going to have these things. Now, make sure that you also provide some information in your paper demonstrating that you understand what probation, parole, jail, or is. Some research information provided, but this is where you're actually going to provide your agency overview and background. Okay? There are certain things in here. And when you go to the rubric, we'll click on the rubric, which is demonstrating again. It tells you the exact same thing that you need to do, depending on which agency you provide. There is, and don't just say there's a mission statement. I want you to give me the mission statement. Then cite the source that you got the mission statement from. Make sure that your information has citations in the body and references in the end. Very important. And then your organizational stuff should be at least 2 pages long. At least 2 pages long. with the cover sheet and with citations and references. Okay? That is your assignments for the week. And your project, very, very, very important. Again, it clarifies the 4 that you have to do. Don't give me a sheriff's office. If you do give me the sheriff's office, give me the sheriff is over, for example, in our county, Will, is over the Will County Jail. So it's not the sheriff's office, it's the Will County Jail that may be operated by the sheriff's office. I'm focusing on the agency, the Will County Jail. The prisons, probation, or parole. Very, 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 very important. And notice all of them require mission statements. And elaborate on it. Write about it. Explain it. Okay? That's as clear as I can give you about the assignment. Very important, because you got 2 more assignments left. Week 6, week 7, and then the final one I think is due in week 9. So week 7, that's when you do your interview. But I'll talk about that in week 6. That's it. That's the whole thing in a nutshell. If you have any other questions about the assignment, again, you can go back to week 1 under the lessons tab and you'll see again. But this is where you really need to operate on the basis. Satisfy these requirements. Very, 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 very important. Okay? Now, let's go into the lesson for the week. Lesson content. There we go. Okay, we're going to define jail. Just a little bit about the bail process. And we're going to talk about prisons a little bit here. Okay, again, your assignments. We're going to talk about jail versus prison in just a minute. We're going to deal with an interview regarding jail issues. And we're going to skip this. But I've already gone over the agency project with you. I've gone over the written assignment and the discussion, and then the survey. So let's talk about, based on your reading and material, about jails. So what's the difference between jails and prison? And actually, the only real difference in the two is the length of incarceration or length of time. It says here that jails, they operate for short periods. Generally, what people should be aware of is when you are arrested and you are locked up, you are put in jail. And you could remain in jail for the period until your trial unless you make bail. If you make bail, you post bail. And bail is in general, in most jurisdictions, 10% of the face amount. So if you have a $25,000 bail, $2,500 cash or property is what you generally have to post. If you are not able to post those items, or if there's no reduction in the bail, you will remain in the jail. And there are sometimes people who are there for misdemeanors. Many jurisdictions are moving now to allow lower bails for nonviolent offenders to reduce the overloading of the jails themselves, which is a good thing. And however, the hardcore criminals, or if you're charged with a serious offense, you may remain there with a higher bail. And then there are instances when, based upon the circumstances, there is no bail. Remember, you don't have a constitutional right to bail. You do have a constitutional right under the 8th Amendment to reasonable bail. And reasonable bail is determined by all the circumstances, the offense, your history, and what kind of individual you've been. Okay. So generally it says here that you're in there for 1 year or less. Generally is correct. However, again, if it takes more than a year to prepare for your trial, you can still remain in jail if you don't make bail, even if it's over a year. So in other words, when you reach a year period of time, you're not transferred to prison. Okay? And we're going to talk about prison in just a few minutes. But I'm trying to make sure that you understand jail. Now, in jail, there are people who are released again on bail on what we call on their own recognizance, ROR, or as we refer to it in our jurisdiction in Illinois, an I bond, which is also called a recognizance bond. It's not based on this I, but the letter I. And so that individual is generally a person who's probably not charged with a serious offense, and or they haven't been a repeat offender in instances. So the point of the matter is that if you don't make bail, you then are fingerprinted, and then your mug shot is taken, and all those different things. And again, that's about jail. Jails are generally located right near the courthouse or in the community. Here in our Will County, the jail is located right behind the courthouse. And in Cook County, there are various outlying courts that handle cases, because Cook County is very big. And the main courthouse, the Latent Criminal Courts building, right behind that in there is the Cook County Sheriff's Office maintains the county jail of Cook County, and it is right in the area of the courthouse. So they're in urban areas. Most prisons, with the exception of some federal prisons, are in outlying communities. Federal prisons might be in the city itself. So they house individuals based upon their particular needs. Juvenile offenders are different from and female and males. They are also housed in terms of concerns. If there's health issues, there's hospitals in there. There are mental sections within jail, those individuals. However, because of the fact that, as it says here, that there are budgetary issues, sometimes people are lumped in, and it presents a real serious problem. And I'm not going to talk about the privatization, but that's a movement that some jurisdictions have done, where they've allowed private organizations to operate the jails, and not a good thing. Not a good thing. It hasn't been beneficial for the inmate, because of the fact that it creates a responsibility for the jurisdiction that has the jail to produce individuals to be incarcerated in those jails. What does that mean? That means almost like statistically you provide so many arrests. And that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. So anyway, in many of the jails, there are agencies that do provide mental health, medical assistance. There's various food service programs, and other institutions. Some jails, though, have problems with the finances and operate on volunteers. Not a lot of them have that problem. There are services provided for the inmate, gyms, libraries. They have religious services and things of that nature. Some provide the ability for individuals who don't have your high school diplomas to get GEDs and other programs drug treatment, alcohol treatment while incarcerated. Some even have individuals who qualify for work release. And so the point of the matter is they work in conjunction with narcotics organizations, Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, and some vocational programs. The key thing is that that individual is still given an opportunity, because remember what happens. In jail, you will go to jail if you receive a sentence that is a misdemeanor because you're in less than a year. Then you can be sentenced to jail, not prison. But if it's above that, then we get into prison as well. That's an addendum to what I've said already, to make that clear to you. I'll repeat that again. In jail, you're sent there if you're charged with a misdemeanor, and misdemeanors mean that you are sentenced for less than a year, and then, or a year or less. After that, then if there's a higher sentence, you're sentenced for, then you end up at prison. So now that's jails. So there's a lot of issues with jails because of the budgetary issues. More and more educated jailers or even officers, correction officers, are now working in the jails, and it is providing more professional assistance to the inmates. The requirements are increasing, and we'll be talking about those in a little bit. So now let's talk about prisons. Prisons, as I already kind of tipped you, are more serious offenders, at least a year and a day. So if you go over a year, it's prison. And it says prisons today are almost 90% state versus federal prisons. So almost every state has operated their own prison. Illinois Department of Corrections we have, which out here where we are, one of the big facilities is Stateville. There are other facilities located down southern part of Illinois, and some jurisdictions have more than one. Most have prisons for females and males. I don't know of any prisons that are where there are males and females. If they are, they have totally different sections or wings. And prisons primarily involve violent offenses, and there are a lot of different ethnic groups, but there are a lot of minorities that are incarcerated in the prisons. And the prisons are determined by maximum, the hardcore criminals. That means that they can be locked down for long periods of time, all the way down to minimum security prisons. So we're going to talk about that in a second. But the FOB, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, is the one who pretty lays out the foundations that states should operate under, and federal prisons. And individuals receive some of the same benefits that I talked about earlier, except most are not given release from prisons. Most they can earn their education while in prison and all the other things. In addition to the Bureau of Prisons, each state department has a corrections department, including the District of Columbia. There are problems because individuals are stacked in there pretty tight. There is a shortage of good officers working there, as well as budgetary restraints. And then, of course, there's the old recidivism or repeat offenders, individuals who get out, maybe even be placed on parole, and then commit an offense, and they end up back in prison, or they can complete their parole and then commit another offense and then end up being recommitted again. So it creates some problems. So let's talk about the types. Minimum security prisons, dormitory living. It says relaxed parameter security, and they can attend school and work. Now, again, a lot of times these are prisons that some of them don't even have walls, but they get all of this on the campus. They don't necessarily leave there. Some very special arrangements are made for short terms, but in most instances, it's provided there. And these are individuals who've not committed violent offenses. Medium security is where you see a double bunk. You see the fences with the guards and the towers. That's what you generally see when you see prisons. There's various yard things they can do. They can play football, baseball, and other things in the yard. There are other activities. The maximum security, also surrounded by walls. There's observation of the cells themselves. The toilet and the sink is usually right there in the cell. You've seen those there. There's a double fence, watchtowers with armed guards and restricted movement within the cell block because you're getting more serious offenses. And then the very bad supermax are given just 1 hour out. They're locked down 23 hours on camera, no communication with each other, and it's really intense, really intense. Okay? Those are the types that some jurisdictions have. The warden is responsible for everything that takes place within the prison. Associate wardens, I can tell you that here, for example, the correction officers, when you reach the level of lieutenant or major, and most of the time the majors, if they're on hand, are placed over the prison. And in fact, I have a student, she has been over a male facility, Stateville, several times when the warden is not available. And so the idea is that they're responsible for the day-to-day operations of the prison itself. So now you got jails and you got prisons, okay? And this one, we're going to try to see if we can do the lockdown, but I don't think it's going to work because usually it doesn't. Let's try, see what happens. Okay. No, it's definitely not. It's not showing up again. So we're gonna skip that. But check this particular page from the Minnesota Department of Corrections, and you can find some information. For those of you who are from Minnesota, you'll be able to find out information, and it explains this one of their facilities. So that's a little plus for those of you who are in Minnesota. In the meantime, let's complete today's session by going through an interview with Brian Frank, who is an assistant jail administrator, and he talks about many of the issues. So I am going to, because they tell me that it records better when it's about a 10-minute piece. So hold on.
Tell me about your background and your position here in Sherburne County.
Sure. Well, I worked at the Sherburne County Jail for the past 18 years. Over the past 18 years, I held the capacity of a corrections officer, the jail sergeant, the jail captain, and currently I'm the assistant jail administrator.
Okay. And your background?
Before that, I worked for Pep Foods. I was assistant produce manager. I was going to St. Cloud State University when I was the assistant produce manager. And then I had an opportunity to apply for Sherburne County, which I did, and I was accepted. Before that, I was in the Marine Corps Reserve. I'm a veteran for the
about the setup of your jail and the types of inmates you serve?
Yes, our jail is actually, it's kind of a unique jail. We hold federal inmates, so we have a contract with the U.S. Marshal Service and Immigration to hold federal inmates. Most of the inmates that we have are federal inmates. On any given day, we have about 80 to 100 county inmates. The rest of our inmate population are federal. We have pushed over 600 inmates a couple years ago. We're pushing that every day. Recently, it's dropped down to about 400 any given day. Inside the jail, its design is unique as well. There's three different kind of styles of the layout of the facility. We have linear style, we have modular remote, and we have direct supervision.
What do those things mean?
The linear style jail is basically a day room that has cells attached to the day room, and there's not a corrections officer that's in the unit that's watching the unit all the time. The corrections officers make rounds, so they have to make rounds every 15 to 30 minutes, going through and just making sure that things are okay. It's a difficult area to control because you're not always observant on what's going on in there, so it makes it more difficult. What we've done with that area is made it into a special management area. So this is where we have our lockdown inmates. So if they go into disciplinary sanctions, they're locked down 23 hours a day, and they have 1 hour out where they can go into the day room. And once they have that hour out, they can use the phone, they can shower, read the paper. So that's basically what they're able to do during that hour. We only have or allow one person out at a time, so there's no contact between the inmates back there in our disciplinary setting. So, but when I first started, that was our jail. It was a linear style jail, and we would end up going to situations. We were usually putting situations out all the time, putting fighters out because you didn't know what was going on all the time. The pods remote is also in our special management area, but it's an area where we keep like vulnerable adults, people that are classified at a lower level, people that have crimes that we want to pull away from the regular inmate population, such as sex crimes. Those crimes typically aren't very well thought of by the general population, and those people can be subject to manipulation, subject to some extortion, and they're subject to being able to be assaulted in the facility. So we want to pull those people out, keep them safe, and we have a workstation that's in a hallway that has glass that overlooks that area, and that's the positive remote. It's a little bit better than the linear supervision for watching the inmates because you've got sight of line, so you're able to see the inmates, throughout the day, but you don't really hear what's going on in there. It works well for what we have, and then we have direct supervision. Direct supervision is our general population, and in that area we have corrections officers in with the inmates throughout the entire day, and that works real well because not only do you see the inmates all the time, but you're walking, you're talking, and you get a lot of information. You get to hear what's going on inside the unit, and you'll hear this from corrections officers that have been around, feel what's going on in the unit. So you get to know and feel the vibe that's going on inside that housing unit.
Okay, you touched on this, but could you talk more about administrative issues in the jail?
Sure. Our administrative duties are to make sure that the facility is being run according to state law, constitutional law, following our policies and procedures. So we, in administration, we write the policy and procedures for the staff to follow, and we make sure that one of the biggest issues that we have, and it's different from when I first started 18 years ago, is mental illness in corrections. The mental illness facilities that we had back, when I first started 18 years ago have been shut down, and there's not a lot of options to be able to send people who are in need of controlling their mental illness through medication and doctors. They're not around anymore, so they are being kept in the jails. We have probably 1/3 of our population on psychotropic medication. So that's probably one of the biggest issues that we face that has changed from when I first started.
Okay, you mentioned your background. Can you tell us what are the minimum qualifications to be a correctional officer?
Sure. The minimum qualifications is a valid driver's license. You have to be a high school graduate, and that's your basic minimum qualifications. Now, we look when we go through the interview process, and we're looking for people that are well-rounded, people that are great communicators, and we look for people that have had 2-year degrees, 4-year degrees. So that is more appealing when you go through the interview process, and you're more likely to get a job with a 2-year or 4-year degree.
Okay. Do you have any advice for today's students?
One of the things that we push in corrections is firm, fair, and consistent. So if you get into this business, it's very important for you to be firm on the rules, consistent with the rules, and you have to be fair with the rules. You can't be allowing one individual to do something that you're not allowing another individual to do. Going through the interview process is very important to do a little research on what you're getting into. So when you're going through the interview process, you're able to intelligently answer the questions that are being asked. Communication is probably the biggest thing that we look for, a good communicator, someone that isn't afraid of being able to talk to people and give them bad information on occasion, and but being able to deliver that information in a way that isn't going to jeopardize any kind of security issues in the facility.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that's some good information that's been provided to you. That interview, you noticed at the end, he talked about the minimum requirements, but as we already continue to remind you that you're better off by getting a 2-year to 4-year degree. And the key thing is that you should be aware is that jails as well as prisons are moving more towards the professional individual, the well-educated individual. And one of the reasons is because they're better prepared to deal with the circumstances and situations that they'll encounter on a day-to-day basis. It also tends to cut into the high volume of litigation that takes place in jails and prisons because of something that maybe a correction officer did or did not do, or even the temperament of those individuals in those roles as well. So it's very, very, very important that we have people. And that business about not showing favoritism, you'll hear it over and over and over. Almost everybody I talk to, firm, fair, and consistent. And, when you reach that stage, you'll reach the point where inmates may challenge you, but you're still firm, fair, and consistent. They'll begin to know what to expect, and will then help you in your communication with them. Then, yes, you do have to sometimes give them bad news, bad information. And when they say bad information, they weren't talking about doing something unprofessional. You give them some bad news, but you have to be prepared for their response to that, and recognize that obviously when most people get bad news, they're not happy about it, and sometimes there's some backlash or repercussions from it. So anyway, that's it for this week. Jails, we talked about prisons.
talked about the written assignments. We talked about specifically reminding you about the requirements for the um, assignment that you have with the project and this section of the project. So if you go through and has taken the time to go through this lecture, then you will be better prepared to complete your written assignment. Okay? So I will see you in a couple weeks, and I'm going to say good night at this time.